so this year has just been absolutely wild. I didn't sleep last night. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning, and the next caregiver is going to be here at 7, so I don't anticipate getting any sleep tonight. So I was just like, I'm going to just process this energy, take the time to figure out, prioritize all my shit, because obviously when things aren't in alignment, like, it's not always some grand thing, it's like often it starts actually always with very little things, and it's how much you pay attention to those things. If you let certain things go on for, too long, they end up getting big, and then it is a big thing, and then it is a dramatic thing. You'll note that most of not even most, the people that you know that tend to be very dramatic, I'm not trying to be offensive, but people that perhaps tend to be over dramatic, tend to always put things off or continue to involve themselves in the same bullshit or act and behave the same sorts of ways that have gotten them into trouble before because they feed off of the chaotic energy. It's not that I haven't been that way. I've just recognized in my time that the times that I was that way, I was completely fucking out of my mind. I wasn't in alignment with myself. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't behaving clearly. I wasn't taking care of myself properly. I wasn't taking care of others properly. I wasn't doing shit except fucking up, and like, that's the case for everybody. That's why I don't judge when people are in those positions. And I try not to even, like, it's easy to put people off when you're not in alignment with them or they're not in alignment with themselves, even, like, to kind of view them like they're innately bad. And maybe some of the people that you meet that are constantly in bullshit or like are super toxic or like mentally unstable, like, maybe they'll always be that way. Maybe they'll continue to make those choices for the rest of their life. I've known plenty, that have been that way. But at the same time, that's not the case for everyone. I believe that everyone has the same capacity to become aware unto themselves and to claim their power and to overcome those things and to, in essence, just grow up. I just don't think that everyone does. And I think that that's a shame. What I was just saying to myself before I started this video, I was like, I need to make a video. How, people will live. I've in my own life been so toxic and, been in complaint about it, and then been extremely codependent in order to, I would say that to myself, that it was to excuse the behavior. And even then I wouldn't be fully honest about that with others. But what I was really doing was making an excuse for just the ego satiation of being validated in being in misalignment. And, that's kind of been like, I guess, a frustration that I've recognized in myself this year as I've been in this process. It's like, I know thousands of people. I've met this year, a few dozen, and met like new people. I know people that haven't met a new person their entire fucking lives. So I'm aware that there's a spectrum for those things. Although in my experiences, because I'm always traveling and meeting new people and doing new things, I tend to meet a lot of people that also are like that. And like, in my experience this year, I've met so many people, like, yeah, I've met like probably, 20 different people just this year that like have not just lived a lifestyle similar to mine, but have gone far, far, deeper into things or gotten more caught up in things. And again, it's on a spectrum, and I'm definitely not in some extreme. Yet, in my own personal experience, I've also, as much as I've met those people, I've also met just as many people, if not even more, which is so frustrating to me. People that will tell me, like, you're the only one that can be like this. People that, within the matter of knowing me for a day, have convinced themselves that they're in need of me because I have some energy that they just can't seem to find anywhere else. And it's okay. I mean, it's egotistically, like on a personal level, frustrating to me just because I was not something to be admired the grand majority of my life. I'm only 34, so most of my life, up into my 20s, um, I was nothing but shit on by people. I was the butt of every joke because I made that the case. I made those allowances, and like I would laugh it off, and I would take things really well, and I'd continue to serve people, and I just sacrifice myself constantly, and I didn't think twice about it. It was my actual identity, and it had me fucked up. My misalignment was my identity, identified by it, and like I used to make excuses for it, just like I see so many people doing, and like I have to remind myself not to get frustrated with it because everybody's on their own path, and you know, everybody's coming to things at their own time, and it's easy to look at somebody and be like, you've been through this, and you have this, and this, and this, and this, and like, why couldn't you make this decision that I would make in your shoes? When like, if I was in their shoes, if I was actually in their shoes and in their skin and in their experiences, I would be them, and I would be making the choices that they're making. So like, I don't get to fucking judge, although I tend to. But I have so many people tell me that shit, and it's just like, how is like even on the street, like when I'm meeting people that have like lived lives like I've lived, like they haven't made the choices that I've made to heal from those things, to process those things, to continue fighting. There, so many people, most people got to a point where they really did give up, and like I didn't start these videos, but when I got to Austin, I started talking about how, when I had first left Austin earlier this year, I had accepted defeat, and that was really like the first time in my life I'd really done that fully like that. And that's even, I'd tried to kill myself multiple times throughout my life, and especially like between 2016 and 2018. But I was actively running in those situations. I was scared to death of responsibility, of my fear of not being able to, not attain to, you know, hold up to those responsibilities, to my personal responsibility, not just to myself, but to my, I like my person in the world, and just having high standards for myself, but not even like it was this constant struggle of knowing what my true alignment was, because we all do, because it's innate within us, because it's within our DNA. It's the God within us, and we all have it. But having identified myself by my misalignment, fighting it, and uh, always, and I could even acknowledge it, like to a degree, like that I was actively fighting, people treating me well and treating me with respect, and um, putting myself in situations where I was gaining reward, um, not just karmic lessons. And like, I've become highly aware of the fact that that's just, it's an ego issue. It's, I didn't have an ego issue growing up. I really was just naturally humble, which like I've met people that are the same way, just kind of timid. Even if they're outgoing or very gregarious, they're timid in their like approach to a sense of responsibility, and they tend to take a lot of responsibility onto themselves naturally. where a lot of people have to kind of be like trained into that, if anything at all. A lot of people thrive not ever doing that, and just like breeds of dogs tend to be so different, and their training so different, and all their personalities tend to be different based on those things. We're no different. And this ego had allowed me to convince myself that this innate humility that I had was sustainable without like an active self accountability. Um, when I started identifying myself by my misalignment, my ego tricked me into thinking that my sense of humility was somehow, because it was innate, and it is, but it still like requires active attention. And I kind of, I tricked myself into thinking that I could lie to myself and then lie to others. I didn't look at it like that. It's just what it was. But like, that I could accept that it didn't have to do the work, to be my best and to put myself into better experiences and to, demand the things that I deserve out of life, because that's my responsibility to myself, and that's my responsibility to the grander reality. Because if I leave this world without having claimed what was mine, there's plenty I can leave unclaimed. But if I go without claiming any of it, including my own reality, like, I've forsaken the greatest gift I've been given. Like, there's so much. You're not just given a gift so that you can leave it in the package and never open it, never, even recognize what it is, put it on a shelf and just be so thankful that like, my best friend gave me a gift once, never even opened it, have no idea what it is, but I love them for it. Like, that's great. That in of itself is a power for sure. But like, the whole point of the gift is to put it to use, and in putting those gifts to use, you also put to use the act of that gift having even been given. Without putting those things to use, the gift didn't need to be given at all. You already loved your friend so much that like, they didn't even need to give you that gift. And maybe that's the supreme being, the supreme way of being. But I still think everything is about a balance. I think that it's, at least my ego, like, it's a little slimy little fucking snake. It makes it, it tricks me, first, so that, and I recognize this in my mom, and of course my ego allowed me to recognize it in my reflection, but not in my own person, for far too long. And what it really took for me to be willing to kind of wake up from that, and it wasn't even, it was a willingness. It was a willingness. I was doing the work. I was willing to do the work. I guess I can't discredit that, because had I been unwilling and continued to be in rebellion against my own self and my greatest reality, I'd have just kept fucking myself up. I literally, like, I was trying to kill myself. Like, I obviously wasn't happy, and even the times that I thought that I was happy, I was still being extremely self-destructive. My identity hinged on self-destructive behavior, in every degree. Like, that's what's so weird now. People will ask me to do comedy because that's what I started doing when I came to Austin, and I'm like, I don't even do that anymore like that, because like, the vein that I found my capacity for it in, it's not that I don't have it naturally, and I'll come to it at another point when that's what my focus is, or when I'm more like freed in my head to be able to do those things. But like, what I was just doing with it was using my misalignment. It was like exploiting my own misalignment in order for entertainment. And like, I'm smart. I'm sure that I can come up with smart jokes, but that takes like time and energy. What came naturally to me was to project my trauma in a satirical way in order to um, kind of make light of my misalignment and to validate that that was acceptable based on the way that it was received by others. And it was like once I started doing stand up, I like very quickly realized that about myself and about like that industry in of itself. Not even just that industry, like I'm not calling out the comedy, like it's the industry. It's not just the industry, it's in our innate person. It's the ego energetic transference, that we tend towards of codependency. And you know, my, the personal work I've been doing for years, for my entire life at this point, but like, especially since I was like in my mid 20s, has been to process my codependency, to work on it and to release myself of it. Like I don't believe that it, I think cooperation is balanced and healthy and good as long as it's equal. But I don't think that codependency is ever, at least the way that I tend to go about it, and maybe that's me just being extreme, is that codependency is ever uh, there's just always healthier alternatives um, than being codependent. I believe that the second that you start looking outside of yourself to secure some sort of internal sense of experience, regardless of what it is, like you're already out of alignment. You're stepping outside of alignment. You are yourself. You are you. You are the thing that you experience life through. Like you are so powerful that you have the power to put that power into other things and then call those things you and identify yourselves by them, so much so that other people start to think that that's you too. And like, it's fucked up because that power could be used for good, but instead we all just tend to ego satiate. And it's like, like the second that somebody tells me, I know that things were really fucked up, I know that I experienced trauma, I know that somebody else did, but I'm going to pretend that it didn't happen, and I'm literally going to degrade that person for being open about it because it forces me to confront things I'm simply not willing to confront, and I'm simply not willing to confront that. When somebody tells me that, like, it's my ego then has a hard time, like, not just jumping right on board and trying to stand in judgment over that. But like, what good is that doing when it comes to ego transfer and energy transference? Like, what good is that doing when it comes to enacting my power in a relationship or in an experience or situation? Like, our egos help us to learn how to identify ourselves. They give us a sense of personality. They help with our gaining our power to creativity. Egos are good for the concept of individualism, but everything has to be in balance. The concept of individualism in of itself denotes that there is something that is not the individual, that there's a collective, like, and that the individual is outside of that collective or somehow separated from that collective. And in nature, innately they are. But again, innately, the act of being isolated means, it denotes that there is a community elsewhere. And um, there, nothing can be separated from those things. Like, that is why I practice the Tao, because the concept of yin and yang it's everything. Like, but at the same time, the practicing the Tao, for me at least, resonated deeper to keep me from eating of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the concept the capacity, the the concept, the reality of negativity and positivity being considered good or evil based on personal experience, eating of the fruit of it is to consume the consequences of that knowledge. And the consequences, the knowledge in of itself that there things can be defined as good or evil dependent on the experience of them, is not innately evil. All things in the garden were good and were made for good, and it was our response. It was even in our response to receiving the consequences that we were told to be kept from, like we were told we could be kept from. There was a freedom to receive those consequences, but we were told that the consequences in of themselves were death. Um, and I mean, it's just that's the concept of logic, right? I mean, that's what science is. The whole point of science is really just to prove things, but to prove something, you can't ever truly prove it. You create a small death for it to exist within, so that it can be contained. And science continues to, be disproven by itself for the sake of being proven unto itself. And um, that's in of itself, that process is very reflective of our own process of coming to a point of self-actualization, um, which is why I use all things as a tool. But the Tao in of itself, like, refuses, it doesn't just have black and white, it has white and black and white, but it also has the two of them standing side by side. Like, it's not just one or the other, it's both of them, and they're together creating one complete circle. Um, there's an entire concept in that, that to me resonated much deeper, um, than the concept of the cross. But the concept of the cross, I believe, is essential as well. I mean, at least for me, like, all of these things were a step process. But what I've recognized is that it, like, comes to people in different ways too. I've met people of other religions and faiths and beliefs, and the way that they feel about things is that, the same way that I do, only they're coming from a different perspective, and I can't discredit their experiences or what they went through. For me, having been raised Christian was a solid foundation, for building a solid home on myself being my home, my own my own alignment with myself, my own capacity to be in alignment with myself being my home, my comfort, my security, my fortress, my, you know place where I can replenish, my sacred space. Like, I provide those things for myself, um, regardless of where I'm at. But that took time and, a lot of energy, and it took a lot of doing the work. And like I said, like, when I was out of misalignment with myself, instead of doing the work, I was making excuses as to why the work didn't need to be done, or it was okay that it wasn't being done. We see these things everywhere, in our reality. It's on all these different levels, which is why, I said that it's not always some huge dramatic thing. Sometimes it's, misalignment is like, oh, I have a tummy ache. Well, it's probably because I ate too much of whatever that was, or I drank soda or whatever, like, the consequence thereof. And then the way that we choose to respond to that. I used to get panic attacks from Red Bull, but I noticed that if I just drank more Red Bull, it would counteract that to the point that I would just become hyperactive. There was like a balance. First, I'd become, it's like a drug, and it definitely is a drug, and I used it like a drug. But like, at first, it would make me feel very seamless and very, like, on point and very focused. But it very quickly would become something else, where it would just, like, make me very anxious. And if I didn't overdo it, that anxiety would just linger to the point that like the next day I would have full blown panic. But if I abused alcohol, I mean if I abused uh, caffeine, um, I realized that if I gave it a control over me, and then learned how to control it, there was I can't say that it was like harmonious because it was parasitic more or less relationship, but it created a sustainable. It was a codependent relationship. It's codependency, and codependency. Like the thing about it is that it uh, imitates balance, and it is sustainable, but not. It's sustainable, but the thing is that like because it's a parasite, like it's the kind of thing like a certain parasite like will literally feed its host just to make sure its host lives forever. So like it'll care for its host, like it'll make sure that its host like is healthy as hell so that it can live off of it. I'm a caregiver, like I've seen plenty of parasites that work that way. um, and I get as in the position that I'm in as a living and stuff. Like I know that that's something people are always kind of in fear of, or kind of skeptical of, and it's something a standard I have to hold myself to is not being that way. But like a parasite will be surviving off of its host, and like will even help its host survive and potentially even longer and safer than it would have otherwise. Um, but at the end of the day, it's just because that host is being controlled as a resource. Sometimes I guess that works for people. Again, I try not to judge, and I guess it works in nature too that way. Sometimes we're like, there's a line between, I forget what the word is, but between a parasitic relationship and a symbiotic relationship. Um, there's a difference between trading resources and harvesting resources using manipulative tactics. Um, but that's the wild thing about ego, is because like the more that I see like people that kind of have a proclivity of being that way, like they're just really egotistical. Like they're more out of misalignment than I am half the time. You know what I mean? Like they don't. Than I've been for a long time. Like they don't know themselves. Like that's why they do that shit. So like I can judge them about how it's dumb to judge like something that already judges itself. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't need a judgment. I'm just wasting my time and energy for what, my own ego satiation. Like I don't know. So I'm trying to process a lot of this stuff because like I'm well aware that in my past I've been just, my tendency has always been to be a people pleaser, to sacrifice myself uh, to help people even when I'm not able to help myself, sort of deal. When like that's never the right mindset. I found in this journey when I didn't have anything, I have what I have, like two pairs of shorts, two pairs of pants, and like six shirts or something like that, a couple sweaters, a couple pairs of shoes, all that. And, there were times that I would give those things away, and then I would find myself getting something from somebody else and giving something else away, and giving my food away when I had multiple granola bars. Like, okay, well, I really only need one because I know how to manifest more for myself. I'm also a fucking 34-year-old woman that, people find attractive. So, like, it's not like if I was really in dire need that I couldn't rely on someone. If I really had to ask or had to beg, like people would help me. I'm well aware of that, so I choose to not exploit that. I've exploited enough, like that's the whole point of what I'm getting at. Like I exploited my entire identity most of my life. Like So for me, where I'm at now, like it doesn't really feel like it's hard to not exploit myself. It's actually harder to ensure I'm not being exploited, but like I recognize it more than ever as well because I've I'm like I said, I'm over my bullshit. I'm keenly aware of, you know, the value of what I have to offer and what it means for me to not to meet those standards without holding like that value over myself or over others. Like I leave it to others to determine for themselves what they believe my value to be, and then I set my boundaries based on those things because one, you can't change people, and people will be manipulative, and you tend to get really fucked up if you just try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt all the time and just give yourself freely and willingly to everybody all the time and let people walk all over you. It just doesn't serve anything. It's really not. It's not only that it doesn't serve anything. It does serve something. It serves the mentality that it's okay to walk all over people. You know, I'm in this, and the people that would do so, I'm in a position where like what I'm learning right now actively in my experiences is where those lines are drawn in of myself. I've spent a lot of time learning that regardless through my experiences, but this is kind of like it's like the final run, the final push of like, okay, well, like apply what you've learned, apply what you know, make sure that you truly know yourself about those things. And I do, but at the same time, like every time I'm confronted with a new experience, I take in new information and then I process it differently. You know, it shifts all of the other data that I have, and I have to move everything around and replace it all. And I've learned to do that over time. I've become pretty good at it. Like, you know, it's a process or a little ritual that I had even like when I was backpacking or whatever, hiking, whatever. Even when I lived in my car, like the smaller spaces I've had, actually, I've learned to do it, and it's in part from living with people with OCD, but which I appreciate, honestly. I needed to learn those things because I was a fucking mess. I was a slob. I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about keeping stuff, and I never knew where shit was, and everything was always fucking dirty, and I was always just a fucking mess. So thankful for my experiences and to be where I'm at. And to be able to be confident that like I know what the fuck I'm talking about. I know I know what I feel, I know what I think. I don't have to prove myself to anybody. I'll straight let people be how they are. They won't even know that I know what's going on because I'll continue to behave the way that I behave, which like that's the point. It's not up to me to hold people accountable to their karma or people accountable to their destinies or people accountable to their highest selves. It's up to me to ensure that I am doing those things. And as long, I mean, in my own, and maybe I just am not there yet. Maybe I don't have the energy for that period. Maybe that's just not how it's supposed to be. But like in my experience, every time that I've found myself sacrificing myself for the sake of someone else, I found that it's not actually helping that person as much as I think it is. It's not even helping anything as much as I think it is. It's actually just hurting me. And if it makes things better for somebody else, it's only so long as they rely on that sacrifice, and which ends up creating a codependency that is not sustainable because I'm not sustainable being used as an object. And that just fucked shit up. It ended up, yeah, like inaction is its own action. You can think that well, I'm actively not doing this, so at least I'm not doing this thing where it's like, you're always doing something. you Life is constantly being experienced. Like, you don't get to run from it, ever. This is what it is. Like, you either learn to enjoy it and make the most of it and experience all of the different things that there are to experience in this moment because you are only this person, you know, like in this body, like this one time because of the way that time and space work. Like, it's hard for me to break some of this stuff down because I've been thinking these ways for so long before I learned how to communicate them, that by the time I started communicating them, like, I'm like, this is like, this is how it's always been. Like, this is how, like, I'm already so deep in different stuff and have come through different things, and like, that's what I have to offer people. That's why I try to offer it to people, because I did that shit to survive. I did that shit for me, but like, if I get myself a mansion and have every, any food I could eat, any drug I could do, any person I could sleep with, any, you know, anything you could just possibly imagine that the world could possibly give you, but I didn't take the time to learn myself or to heal from the bullshit that I was going through when I was actively trying to kill myself, like, I wouldn't be a happier person. I've already had everything handed to me. Even if I worked I've already worked really fucking hard. There isn't a sense of reward in things you're not willing to receive a sense of reward from, and like that in of itself, like, that is the reason that it's so important that we know ourselves. Like, people get like frustrated with me, like, oh, you're just such a goody two shoes, just trying to like be perfect. Like, yeah, okay, that might be part of my struggle. But why would that be your problem unless I'm actively judging you or holding you to those standards? Like, ultimately, you're just made uncomfortable by the standards I hold myself to, because when I prove that I can do things that, we all tend to believe we can't do, suddenly now you're well aware, because it's fucking me. Like, I'm not so fucking great. Like, I'm not just like anybody else. My life was different. Everybody's life is different. But like, I get that, like, I'm not just like everybody else, but like, at the same time, like, I'm not like more valuable than anybody else. I don't have more going for me than anybody else. Literally, I've seen people that like have severe uh, mental retardation that are more successful than I am. I've met people that have had way more severe abuse and trauma than I've had, people that have lost limbs, people that have, lost children, people that have lost, their entire families, and they were close to them, and, like, they're best friends and they were good to them, and like, it's not that I haven't been through shit or that I can't relate to those things, but like, everybody has their own shit. Everybody has their own shit. That's the gift of fucking being an individual. You could be born a Siamese twin and you're still your own person. Like, you're still going to experience things through your own sense of perception. It's just how it works. Like, every fucking leaf on a tree experiences reality just a little different. That's why sometimes some leaves get brown and are completely dead and fallen off the tree while there's still other green leaves. Like, what the fuck? Why is that leaf more important than that leaf? That's not how the fuck it works. It's what you're willing to receive, what you're capable of receiving. It's a mixture of both. I've met people that have so much worse, like, they're worse off than I am in basically every way you could imagine, but their attitude about it is so much better than my attitude's been about my shit, that like, they're wealthy, they're rich, they're good. Like, and now I'm sitting here complaining about this shit or feeling away about this shit. Like, everything is just a matter of perception and perspective. And that's the whole thing about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, is that you perceive things to be good and evil based on your reality, or based on your perception of them. But based on your perspective, you can decipher what really truly is good or evil, and you can come to, if you set yourself up right, if you get high enough, like, you'll find that, oh, it's all good. Well, yeah, I mean, there's black and white mixed into it. There's actually a whole lot of colors mixed into it, but when you step back, it doesn't just look like a fucking mess. You actually realize that it paints an entire picture, and that everything actually had a very specific purpose. So specific that, like, if you go back down into it and into the individual aspects, like, you will find beauty in every aspect if you're willing, but you can't view things that way until you're willing to step far enough back. And our ego, because it's not us but identifies itself as us, like, it's a tool, and it's a good tool, but like, the second we start identifying by it, we no longer are giving ourselves the capacity to be able to step outside of ourselves long enough to be able to see that we actually have everything we need right within us, because we're already part of the grandest picture. Like, we are inherently abundant and fulfilled. It's our sense of being unfulfilled that makes any allowance for unfulfillment to exist. Like, the concept of the devil is the devil itself. Like, evil doesn't exist if you don't give it power to. And like, people can literally try to be evil against you, and instead it'll just be kind of sad or pathetic, or like it'll be a learning lesson, or like it'll be the thing that brings them to their own awareness of themselves. I don't know, but like it's not gonna have power over you unless you give it power over you. So like, reminding myself these things, because it's easy to say, but obviously when you're going through whatever experiences, or when you're like, oh, well, I haven't eaten, or I'm low on sleep, or I have a tummy ache, or like this person was mean to me, or I just lost this thing. Like, there's so many different reasons that we can use to excuse our misalignment with our greatest selves. And like, there's so many different ways that people will empathize with those things, and that's all great and good, honestly, like in its own right. But balance dictates that like, you can't just fall back and rely on those things, especially the things that are outside of yourself, like validation from others, consideration from others, valuing at all by others, or by any external, structure, or system. Like, we're beyond those things. We're greater than those things. Like, our individualism is just like, it's like, part of the fun of it, but it's not like the entire game. Like, the whole point that you're an individual is so that you can play that game, like, and experience it. And I don't know. I know that I've talked about like 20 different things now, and I'm not sure that this has been entirely cohesive. But I don't know. I just, I'm trying to process a lot of feelings, trying to process a lot of things. I don't want to keep going through the same systems and cycles and having to relearn the lesson over and over again. And I truly haven't felt like I'm having to learn the lesson again. What it feels like again is that I'm being put to the test this time, right? Like, this isn't the quiz where you're just like answering all these questions, but you can look in the book or you can look back and stuff. Like, this is like, oh, I have to sit here and actually like prove this shit and do it. And yeah, so I guess I'm balancing that out, because like, when I let the negativities get in and start to feel, victimized by my own experience, like, who am I giving power to? Definitely not to myself. If I'm, saying, oh, I can't handle this, or this is too much, or I don't know if this, like, just chill out. I literally handled everything in my fucking life. Like, I've gone through shit where like, and I've done it, and I've done it, and I've done it well. Like, it does, people don't want to hear it. They don't believe it. They weren't there to see it, so it can't be real. Most people have ulterior motives, so they're just waiting to find mine. Like, I get it. But I also was out on the street and had, anybody that I met that was a traveler had lived lives like I had. Shit I had to tell them was not surprising. They made me feel very much at home. But the people that actually had been living out on the street were all like, what, you're not a prostitute and you don't do drugs? Like, what the fuck? Why are you here? Like, you're not one of us. Like, I don't understand. Or I'm like, bitch, I'm poor. Like, not having money is all it takes to get on the street. It don't matter. And I met people on the street that were millionaires, and in a past life. And I met people that had always been on the street, and some of them did better than others with how they handled those things. I don't think that I'm like some super unique person. But like, at the same time, like I said, like, so many people, just as many people, like, are always just like, what, like, You're the only sober person I've met out here. You're the only woman I've met that won't like just go sleep with a man so that she can have a place to live. Like, you're literally willing to sleep on the fucking ground just because you don't want to sleep with a person. Like, yeah, I know it looks fucked up, but that's what standards look like these days. Not my fucking fault. I'ma still do the thing. Like, that's what it is. Like, it's very easy to judge, you know, what looks so crazy, but like, have you looked at the fucking world these days? People don't know who the fuck they are, and they're not trying to. In fact, they are actively trying to identify themselves by their misalignment because that's what's more comfortable. And now we've created an entire society just based on empathizing with people about it instead of trying to hold people accountable to what we know they are capable of. And like, I don't know how to do that in a healthy way. The ways that I learned were very unhealthy, but that's what taught me what healthy was. Like, personally, I don't want to go out there like being unhealthy and holding people accountable to my karma just so that they have to learn the same stupid way that I did. Because I think most people are less dense. You know, most people have a capacity to learn through, you know, good experiences and not just dumb bullshit all the time. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm given too much. I'm not, um, I'm skeptical as to what I'm receiving in return, you know, and if it's actually in alignment with me and with my values and with my value. Um, and so I'm figuring out I'm assessing what to prioritize in of myself in order to, um, you know, uh, confront, confront um, my experiences, you know, as best as I possibly can for my benefit instead of getting in my feelings and letting a sense of lack drive my reality. It's never really gotten me anywhere. Everywhere I've gotten has always come through short bursts of confidence and self-awareness. And I've just been working on, you know, making those things a little more sustainable, a little more consistent. Um, I guess that's what I was thinking about. I gotta go to the bathroom, so I'm leaving. But thanks for listening. I hope you have a nice life. Okay, bye.